India's Navy Chief Admiral D.K. Tripathi said the country is closely monitoring Chinese vessels engaging in undeclared military work in the Indian Ocean region. China, which boasts of the world's largest navy of 370 warships and submarines, has now deployed 7 to 8 naval vessels on a permanent basis in the Indian Ocean region. This includes dual-purpose research or spy ships that map oceanographic and other data useful for navigation and other submarine operations. During a discussion on the final day of the Raisina dialogue, Admiral Tripathi said that the Indian Navy was aware that some of the vessels from China have dual purposes and are not doing what they have declared. Outlining that their activities are being watched, the Navy chief added that in many cases they've called out such ships and told them that it's not allowed. On the panel, Admiral Tripathi was joined by top military commanders from Quad countries, including the Chief of Joint Operations of Australia, Head of US Indo-Pacific Command, Chief of Staff of the Japan Joint Staff. At the event, Chief of Staff of the Armed Forces of the Philippines expressed the country's willingness that India joins the relatively new Quad strategic alliance that it has forged with the United States, Australia and Japan to counter threats in the Indo-Pacific region. General Romeo Bronner's request comes at a time when Manila and Beijing have had a series of escalating confrontations in the disputed waters of the South China Sea. At a press conference recently, Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi said that the Philippines' actions in South China Sea were not independent but part of a screenplay written by external forces to smear China. General Bronner said he will open up the potential for India's Quad membership in a meeting with India's Chief of Defence Staff, General Anil Chauhan. A senior Indian officer said that the meeting had happened, but it was not immediately clear if the matter had been discussed. So this is the latest. India's Navy Chief Admiral D.K. Tripathi has said that the country is closely monitoring Chinese vessels which are engaging in undeclared military work in the Indian Ocean region. As you know, China, world's largest navy of 370 warships and submarines, has now deployed 7 to 8 naval vessels on a permanent basis in the Indian Ocean region, which also includes dual-purpose research and spy ships. For more on this, we're now being joined by Assistant Editor for Foreign Affairs, Siddhant Sibbal. Siddhant, thank you so much for joining us. Of course, this statement is very important that's come from Navy Chief Admiral D.K. Tripathi. What's your assessment of this statement and also India's role in this?
Well, if you look at the situation in South China Sea, it remains quite precarious, and the comments by not only the top military commander of Philippines, but also in an interview to WION, the Philippines foreign minister, the foreign secretary, spoke extensively about the situation in South China Sea and in fact lauded India's support for backing the Philippines position. Now essentially the proposal that has been given at a public platform at the Raisina dialogue is something that has to have its own reactions coming from the Indian side and other countries he spoke about. But he also spoke to WION, in which he termed China bully. Now that's a very clear statement, and that statement coming by a Filipino top military personnel from Delhi is something that Beijing will clearly be speaking, thinking about, taking a note about. And we also have seen the speech of the Indian Navy Chief, and in the past as well, the Indian Navy Chief has talked about how there is, of course, a concern over increased Chinese presence in the Indian Ocean region. India, of course, has required systems to monitor the movement of any Chinese vessels. The Indian Ocean Fusion Center, which is based in Gurugram, takes note of every vessel that enters into Indian Ocean from the Straits of Malacca till the Gulf of Aden, and this is something which has increasingly seen many countries being eager to be part of. We recently saw how the European Union, the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, said that European Union will soon appoint its own liaison officer for this important institute. So all in all, it looks like clearly that China is a big concern for countries in the region, and increasingly they have been coming together to cooperate on this issue in the wider Indo-Pacific region, whether it's the Pacific Ocean or whether it's the Indian Ocean.
Right, absolutely, Siddhant. Just for better understanding understanding of this? Of course, the Philippines has called for India to join the Quad alliance to counter China in the Indo-Pacific. That being said, how do you see the situation evolving on that front and India's role there?
Well, essentially, this is a proposal. There hasn't been any reaction coming from. But my understanding of this will be that India will be cautious on any direct action that could lead to more concerns between India and China relationship. Now, there are two aspects to it. First, of course, is that India and China share border. It is easy for countries who do not share border, of course, Philippines aside, to talk about China very vocally, in fact, condemn China as well. We saw the New Zealand Prime Minister was in India earlier this week, and he spoke extensively on China and the Chinese military exercises near New Zealand. But for India, it could be quite a delicate line given that there have been skirmishes in the past. The second, of course, is the normalization process between India and China that started last year at the Kazan summit, the BRICS summit that took place, where leaders of India, the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the Chinese President Xi Jinping met. We recently saw the Indian Prime Minister mentioning about how there hasn't been any major history of conflict between India and China. Both countries can work together. Very positive comment, which was lauded by Beijing, of course. So essentially, India will be very careful in reacting to what the Filipino top military leadership said in Delhi. But clearly, it's a message from Philippines through India to Beijing.
All right. Well, Siddhant, thank you so much for bringing us the latest on this. We'll, of course, continue to track this closely. For latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.